to the coffee Q&A. We got a little bit of special issue going on here because I was just doing some roasting, and I thought, you know what? I think I've got it set up that I can actually talk to you. So let's do some live roasting. So as you can see, we're back in the workshop. Just got to monitor the time as well as the temperature. And this is the Gießen W6A. It's a Danish-made roaster from the Netherlands. It's just a few years old. It's not terribly old. We just got it set up a few months ago, and it's been working pretty well. It's got this strange little thing that I just noticed today because we finally cleaned this sight glass. But as you can see, there's a little ledge in there, and it kind of it gets stuck, and I don't know what's up with that. That's not that that's necessarily a problem, but it does irritate me. Like I want it to fall down quite readily. Some other issues. Good Lord. So now we're reaching first crack. For whatever reason, this temperature probe is telling the controller that it's 480 degrees Fahrenheit, which is not possible considering the roast profile. Sometimes these used machines get a little bit cantankerous, but let's have a look. You can hear the first crack. So here's the color of, well, maybe that's second. No, that's a little bit, that could be, no, that's a little bit past first. All right, let's get ready. I think I'm going to drop it down. So what I'm roasting here is something called the House Nation, the house coffee for Spro, and that was weird. It's kind of a strange beginning. This is the first roasting that I'm doing today. Matt was roasting stuff from Park and Perk earlier. Weird. Oh, no wonder. You know what? I'm totally not paying attention to what I'm doing here. Like, I'm looking at the air. I should be looking at the bean. So 440 is the bean probe. Never mind. Never mind what I said earlier. This is what happens when you only roast every once in a while. Empty head. Is this thing cast iron? Yes. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Faces are cast iron. I believe it. All right. We're right on the 430 or so. I'm going to let it come up. I'm going to add a little bit more power to it. And why 430? Normally I do. Like I said, normally I do 420 on the other roasters, but every roaster is going to be a little bit different. I've been roasting this coffee now for a few months on this machine, and we've been getting really great results at 430. Like this morning's live stream, that House Nation that we roasted a few weeks ago, I think that was on the almost a month ago, I think it was on the 6th of November. Man, beautiful sweetness today from the Trinity Zero, just really surprisingly nice. Oh, there's only one there. So if you have any questions about roasting, let me know, or what I'm doing, or why I'm doing it. I will try to answer as best as I possibly can, because I only know so much in the world, right? Something, the more you realize that your knowledge is actually very small compared to the whole body of things. But what this coffee is, this is a coffee from El Salvador. It's a strictly hard bean, European prep, which means that it is SHD, which means that it's a certain level of density, and that level of density only comes from high grown. That's why SHG, strictly high grown, and the coffee must be grown no less than 1,600 meters above sea level. And this is also what's called European prep. And European prep, in the old days of coffee, there was European prep and American prep. European prep is actually a higher standard than American prep. The American coffee market would allow, a lot lesser coffees to come into the market and not as heavy with the quality standards. So European means that it's screen 15-16, so a certain size and larger. Whereas American prep would be smaller, would be able to get it. All right, let me just put down some things. So I've got our branded buckets, and these are just regular food grade buckets. I get these from a friend of mine that does manufacturing, and she has like tons of these left over from their processes. So she's like, anytime you need buckets, come and get some. And so I'll go get 20 at a time, and just got to go back to the workshop and clean everything up and make it look nice and sanitary. But they're food grade buckets, and then we just put little labels on them. This is kind of how we manage stuff in the roastery, as well as with our wholesale clientele. What we do is we'll basically fill these up. These will hold about 15 pounds of roasted coffee. We will take this coffee and put it, just fill up with coffee, take it to the customer, drop these off, pick up the old ones, and we get through them that way. And then whenever they start to wear out, we just replace them. Fairly simple. And then we've also started to change some of the way that we're doing it. Like a friend of mine was doing a talk, and I remember he said that his talk was be more like Frito-Lay than Cartier. And I was like, what are you talking about, dude? What kind of crazy is that? We all want to be Cartier, right? And he's like, think about Frito-Lay. Frito-Lay has their representatives go out and they limit how much they can actually engage in per week. And instead of waiting for the client to call them and say, hey, we need more product, the reps go there on a regular schedule and make sure and refill the product as they need, so they're always kept up. And ever since he told me that about several months ago, I was like, man, I need to start doing more of that. So we've been trying to work our schedule so that we can be at our clients on a more regular basis, and they don't necessarily have to worry about their coffee supply. Like if they're calling us to say, hey, we're running out of coffee, hopefully that's a time when they're calling us because they have run out inadvertently. Now the question is to get we have to figure out how to actually get this all worked out, meaning that this is ready to come out. About 4 minutes is what you want. I really need to get a stand for this, so this will sit here, and let me just come to the point, we have to make it that way, right? But we want to get the coffee out in a timely manner. Okay, that doesn't work. Because we don't want to lose the coffee, right? If I let it fall too far, it'll start to fly around. It would be helpful if I actually turned on the timer when I started this batch. Alright, so that's our third, I'm loading up our third batch of the house green. This is the most frustrating part of the whole thing, right? In order to not lose coffee and have it fall on the floor, which you can't really sweep up and use, you have to hold the darn bucket. It would be nice if like companies like Gießen would find better ways to do this kind of thing. Like, small roasters are, this is an 11-pound roaster, 6 kilos. Or it's a 6 kilo capacity. We're using 11 pounds. It would be nice if they found a way to actually, roasting companies suck overall. Like, they just don't think about niceties for the roaster, for the roast user. Like, I wish they had more thought on it. But I just think they suck. They suck in terms of, like, the service. They suck in terms of ergonomics. They suck in, like, the thoughtfulness and how they design everything. We have 9.551 pounds of coffee left over, which I believe is going to be right around the range we want. We want to have coffee that is no more than we want about 14% loss is pretty acceptable. you start to have greater amounts, 16, 18, 20. If really dark, which when you'll start to get to like when you go to start to get lower yields on the coffee, more moisture out of it. But here we should be somewhere between 14 to 16% moisture or weight loss due to moisture, and that will be fine. I think Empty Head, you said you asked a question about do I enjoy being a roaster or a barista more? Probably barista, and only because I'm much more of a hospitality person. I like to interact with guests and provide a service for people. Whereas coffee roasting tends to be a very solo kind of pursuit, like you're just all there. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm totally into being alone a lot of times. There's like solitude, quiet. Sometimes in the old roastery, you have a cigar while smoking or while roasting. Oh, 429, we're almost done. We want to drop it, but not like the last one. We want to drop our load right around first crack, right before second crack. So it's a little bit deeper. This one you can actually see it's a little bit lighter than the other one. Slightly, I think there's a slight color variance, which we will have to address, or maybe not. Let's see. Yeah, there's a little bit. Even I would have to say there's a little slight variance in that. So we're not talking apples to apples here, unfortunately. Slightly off. Okay, so now we are 426. We cleared out the drum. This is cooling. This is part of the reason why I actually don't like the idea of having a coffee roaster in a retail space, only because there's a lot there. Even though it's a solo kind of a venture, there are a lot of things you have to pay attention to. There's a lot of things you have to pay attention to, and if you're in a place where people are coming in and they want to talk to you and ask questions, gosh, that would probably make me crazy. Just because you want to try to get all of your, you want to give people, I like to give people the proper attention. Craig says, what's going on, Craig? Developing roast is fun. Production roasting is not fun. Mix the two. Eventually, that probably will happen. But we'll keep them separate depending on how they cup. I will cup them tomorrow. Or no, I'll cup them later today probably to see how they are. Uh-oh, gosh. Well, I guess I can just pull on this. Yeah, it was not terribly rough there at the end. And also, I think that part of why this roast is a little bit lighter is because I'm narrating, so I'm not able to give it my 100% attention. I probably would have liked it. I really should be checking with the trier to see the color. Because really, I don't normally roast to the. I don't really normally roast to the temperature. Temperature's a guide. I really use the senses, mainly because, but this time, I guess I was a little bit panicked. I was like talking, and suddenly, 4:30, gotta go. And then, but I would have liked to have pulled a little more development. This is definitely more along the lines of what you get at a lot of specialty shops, very light roast, or probably it's a little bit darker than some of the kids like, but that's all right. That's all right. Oops. Just kind of dig out inside here, you'll find some unroasted coffees. that may have gotten stuck somewhere. This may have gotten caught like here in this window, and it's under roasted. As you can see, the color is like very yellow, right? So not as not what we want. So we always try to look inside the cooling tray as it's coming out, just to inspect and see what do we need to remove in order to keep as best quality as we can. All right, so we're 3 minutes into the roast. We're starting to get a little bit of color change. You can see there the coffee is getting a little bit less green, going more towards the yellow. This part of the roasted time is what we call the drying phase, right? So the coffee goes in, it's maybe up to 11% humidity, moisture content, and now we're applying heat and we're driving that moisture out of it. So the coffee is exothermic. It's bleeding off energy as much as it can, right? And this is where we start to get the change. It goes from green to yellow to tan, and then it starts to get to the Maillard reaction and starts to brown. We want to see this kind of like hay aroma as well as the yellow right around the 4-minute mark. So we're coming up with 4 minutes. We're 3 minutes, 50 seconds right now, right? Almost. And you're starting to see more of that coloration change, getting a little more yellow. My favorite part of the whole roast is this yellowing part where it starts to smell like hay. I really just love that. Empty Head says, yeah, that James Hawkins level of denaturing chloroplast would be what's giving it the green, is that correct? Collapsing those colors. If that is what that means, then I would say yes. Then the sugars is the moisture evaporation allows the sugars to concentrate and then eventually burn or start to caramelize, burn in the heat. Then yes, I would say that would be an accurate description. But since I'm not well versed enough to know that terminology offhand, I can only guess. All right, so we've reached the point where the coffee is nice and cool. You really want to get another one. So here we have another coffee that is very off color. Get rid of that. Now you want coffee that'll be 4 minutes to cooling. If I could only just set this down up here where it could fall in more naturally, well, let me turn this around so you can, then I could just walk away and not have to do this and not give it too much attention. But because I cannot, and I'm cheap and I don't want to lose too much coffee, there's a lot of lighter roasted. That should be good. We're back. And let me know, we are 7 minutes into the roast. Right, there's 7 minutes. And we are at 408 degrees, so we're getting close. And if we're 7 minutes and 408, then I'm a little bit concerned. 9.841. That's a lot of big difference. 9.841. 417 degrees. 7 minutes 48 seconds. we're starting to see a little bit more color come out of it, right? Now, I'm not, I haven't noticed the first crack the last two rows, and I don't know if that's because I'm talking and occupied, and the second crack is where it really starts to get louder. But so like I'm saying, what's happening is that as the roast progresses, we're now past the drying phase. We dried out the coffee, and now the coffee is starting to, the whole time it's absorbing the heat. It's absorbing the heat and expelling the moisture. And then now that we've expelled most of the moisture, now the sugars will start to burn and get that color difference. And then eventually, right now it's endothermic. So it's absorbing, that's what I'm saying. It's endothermic, so absorbing heat, absorbing heat, absorbing heat, absorbing heat. When we get to the cracking phase, the crack is like a popcorn. Oh, there's the first one. So, it's first crackings now. So we are at now two. Strange. Here is some popcorn. So it becomes exothermic and explodes, and that's what's happening now. The popping of the coffee. Okay, we're gonna go and roll with this. I think that was first crack, so I'm gonna roll with it. What am I looking for? I'm looking for a certain color to happen here. I'm going to pull this in so you can see it a little bit better. There's getting better. So I think what happened was that we were in first crack, the last one, because it's super light and there's so much difference. $4.58, gosh, it's so different. The other days it was roasting at 430, now we're up to 460. I think we're almost there. 464 or just what it is. I guess the earlier number of 480 was kind of on the money. Very odd, very odd. So here is our roasting coffee. So it's roasting there now. Every day is different. Every day is a learning process. Like this roast, this temperature roast degree is dramatically different than over the summer. It could be that, the coffee itself, I kept in the house this last couple of days since I've arrived. Like I actually had I had the coffee stacked physically in my house. People were kind of upset with that, but what can you do? What can you do? All right, so let's move on. While this coffee is now cooling, and we're going to turn down the heat. We're going to bring the temperature back down from 464 down to 430. And I've got our espresso blend. This is the Espresso 99, so I've got 30% of a natural processed coffee that I get from a family in Honduras, and then the rest of it is a wash coffee from Santa Ana in El Salvador. So this is a puro Latino America blend, I guess you would say. Right? But the actual blend will change depending on the coffees and what's available. But I like to have a little bit of that fruit and a lot of body for the espresso. So that's why I like to use some natural coffee. This one, oh man, we are all over the place today. So now we have 3 different shades. So here's the first roast. Right. First roast, right? Second roast, much lighter. That's like first crack level. That's definitely modern day. That's probably the darker side of modern day specialty. Like if you went to Say, or if you went to Tim's joint in Oslo, Tim would probably be like, dude, why are you roasting so dark? And then this is probably their nightmare, which is, even for me, it's slightly darker than I think I would like. At least for this. I think it'll still be great, but just a little bit darker than I would typically like. All right, so now we're back down to 428. I've turned down the heat. I'm going to turn the heat back up. Give it more power. Our roasting times are kind of all right. And then once we hit 430, I'm also going to... Okay, so we're off again. Now this is roast number 4, and we've switched to the espresso away from the house. So the house is here cooling, and the espresso is roasting. So now is a critical time, right? Meaning that, like, these are two different coffees. If I was roasting house and house, and I had a problem, and I had to dump it into here with it, it's not really a big deal. Same coffee essentially, right? But now I don't have that flexibility. So I really have to be very mindful as a roaster that this, once it cools, has to come out. And it's pretty much reached the cooling point. And I just gotta make sure I get just gotta make sure I get the right labeled bucket so that we don't have issues later. Like that would not be beyond the realm of my foolishness. And then once in a while you get all kinds of like coffee stuck in. It just fall. I don't know if it's falling in from somewhere else, but like here, there's more clean. I think it's because it's getting caught somewhere inside the barrel. Another thing, like I was saying, like on a Diedrich, let's say you get the Diedrich IR12. The nice thing about the Diedrich IR12, I can hang this from here, and it will stay. But this one doesn't work like that. Like this one is difficult to work with. All right. Okay, that's good. That's good. Now we're getting ready. Now we're back in the roll. Now I just got to measure this. Okay, that's better. 9418. So that's closer to the first number of 9551. And we are 2 minutes 48 seconds into our 4th roast. Am I missing any comments? The flick and crash. Yeah. Turns exothermic, the gas compression internally before the crack and sudden release of pressure cause the temperature to drop. You probably understand thermodynamics better than I do. I'll say you probably, without a doubt, understand better than I do. I don't, at least in the process of roasting, with the digital readouts that we use, I don't notice a temperature drop once it reaches exothermic. Like, it could very well that once it pops, there is a drop in temperature, but I don't think that these are designed to have that sensitive of resolution in order to see that dip. And things tend to be moving fairly quickly that I don't get to notice it. Oh, it's a pressure and temperature for a given, okay. what you're going to find is that I'm not as strong in the sciences. When I started roasting, the seam sucks a lot of energy, so the temperature of the air in the roaster. Okay. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you, Craig. Yeah, when I started roasting, like I remember one of my mentors, a guy by the name of Marty Curtis. He owns a place called Combustion Systems down in Arkansas. He happened to be in New York City, and I said, hey, I just got a roaster. Could you help me? And he's like, yeah. So he came down from New York when he was working, and he set up my roaster. And it was a Petroncini, like 1979 Petroncini, that only had an analog gauge right here, just reading the exhaust temperature. And I was like, Marty, should we put in can we put in a temperature probe, like one of these? And he's like, no, but you got to learn how to roast without it. Doesn't. Well, he said, do that for a year, and then we'll put it in. I was like, all right. Sometimes when I'm in the role of the apprentice, I'll just kind of follow and try it out, right? So I did, and it ended up being 8 years before I actually got a temperature probe put in. So we roasted from 2008 to 2016 without a roast temperature gauge. And I would only use the bean probe. I would only use the exhaust temperature gauge in analog, in Celsius, and map out the curves by hand every minute. It was a good learning experience. I think if you're willing to do that, it can be a wonderful way for you to learn and get a more feel for the style of roasting that you want to do. Okay, so we're getting a good color change. If I fill up the tryer, it all falls down. There we go. Nice. Starting to caramelize. Starting to make a color change. Now, when coffee falls out into the cooling tray like this, we just toss it. You got to do that when the PC crashes, so you. Yeah. Exactly. I gotta say, on my main roaster at the roaster, we had I was running it on an old PC that surprisingly never crashed. I was really surprised. Sometimes the connection, the USB-C connection between the probe's box and the computer would get wonky or something like that, but I never had a crash, surprisingly. And I'm definitely a Mac person. Nice color. Okay, now we're going to closer. I'm going to take another load and load it up. We were at 413 Fahrenheit, 7 minutes, 20 seconds. Just checking to see if there's any new commentaries. You see those guys that are roasting, like they always do the whole, like the checking thing. Sometimes I'll do that. I don't know if I see anything when I'm doing it that fast. One thing you should be careful about too, like when we had our first roaster, I had the other roaster mounted so that the cooling tray was right about here, right? Right about, came up to there. And I remember one day, it was so hot, like we didn't have any air conditioning in that place. And it was so blazing one summer, and I remember I was like, I'm gonna roast without a shirt, bare chested. And I leaned up against the cooling tray, and it was so hot, I had a burn right across my tummy. Second degree burn, nothing like it. Craig says that on my roaster, if you touch the control panel the wrong way, the data stops being sent to the PC. Then I hit the control panel the right way to get it. Emergency procedure number 1, that's always the key. But now we're getting first crack. And we are at 4:44, 8 minutes, 49, 50 seconds. So ideally, first crack will come at 9 minutes. So we're slightly ahead, but we're on pace. We're on a good pace. So really, ideally, so what I like to do is I will take the first crack, let that die out, and then wait another 40 seconds and then drop. And that brings us right to the edge of second, typically. A bit of coloration, that's kind of what we're looking for in first crack. So now really I'm just looking at the color, because for these coffees, they don't seem to stop, or it's kind of dying down now. 950. So at the latest, I think I'm going to drop it at 10:10. 465. 467. I'm going to 470. 470. 470. And then All right, exciting. Oh, we're going to cool this down. I think, yeah, that's good. 430, 473. Shit. I see an errant bean that needs to get out of it. This batch today, there's a lot of like leftover, like unroasted beans in the different batches. I don't know. Here's a shell. I've also, Craig said, Empty Head says that, I've also got thermodynamics for dummies. I've got books on engineering thermodynamics. Oh, nice. That's a book I should probably get. All right, so now we're rolling. Still too hot. 4 minutes. 455 on the temperature. I gotta lower the temperature down to let it cool. Otherwise, it's still pushing a lot of the airflow. I mean, it's pushing a lot of heat, so it's not really diving. I want it to dive down to 430. One thing you also have to be careful about, right? Right now, I've got the door open to cool it down. I've also got the hopper loaded. These can be rather sensitive. If I hit this by accident, it will dump a lot of them, if not all, a lot of that into the drum. And if this is open, it comes straight into the into the drying tray, the cooling tray, which means that I'm going to be very unhappy, because trying to pick unroasted coffee out of roasted coffee is a miserable, miserable experience. All right, we're 440. I'm just going to start there. 440 and begin. And it's 3 p.m. 440. All right, timer's running. Coffee's cooling. Coffee's in here. We're clean on that. And now we can load up the next load. Give us 3 loads of house, 3 loads of espresso. That'll take us care of us for the next maybe week or less. One of the luxuries of home roasting is emptying the cooling tray before starting the next roast. Yeah, that's that's a wonderful luxury, isn't it? I hear you on that. I hear you. Yeah, that would be miserable. That's miserable. To me, that sounds miserable. I think even though on the Quest M3 I can roast. I think I can roast and cool at the same time. Is that right? So any kind of off-color beans that are significantly off-color, we will get rid of. A lot of that comes from some of the natural processed coffees. The density might be too light, so they'll float, and they may not have been sorted out. Okay, so we're only like a minute and a half, we're 2 minutes into the roast, and already the coffee is cool enough to touch. So that's a really great example of one of the strengths of this particular roaster is that it does have a good cooling tray. So that is important. Like, we want to have a nice cooling tray that will cool your coffee. Cool your coffees in the right amount of time. Now, what I'm going to do, because I'm impatient, that will cut us some time down. See, what I don't like is that it's like an L12, right? If you like a Probot L12, like a Probot L12, the cooling tray goes under the roaster, so it makes it a little bit more difficult in that you can't really reach around and grab it. Ergonomically, this sucks. Like, I don't know what it would be like to work on a roaster that was truly awesome to work with. Like, I've worked on a lot of them. They're all kind of the same. Whether it's Gießen, Probat, US roasters, Loring. Maybe Loring's a little bit different in that most of that is automated depending on how much you spend on them. But a lot of the roasters are kind of the same. Ergonomically, it kind of sucks. Why people are so into Probat is mostly because it's Probat, and you know, there's a romanticism of Probat. Like, if I had a UG22, I would only be singing its praises. Forget the fact that, you know, the exposed belts on the motors, you could get caught up into it if they cut off your arm or mangle it really badly. You know, forget those things. It's just the romanticism of getting mangled is always a good thing. All right, let's break it out. 9.378. Okay, that's good. Really good. All right, this is the roasting. Yeah. Nothing like the romanticism of getting mangled. But it's not cool if you get mangled by a Gießen. Or let's say like, what's the one from Israel? The kind of sleek looking ones. There's no romanticism in that. It's only romanticism if you get mangled by a Probat or maybe a Gotthard, a big ball Gotthard, maybe. Or maybe one of those like old school Royal No. 5 might be okay. So we're getting nice color change. You can even see here, look at this. You can see this one green bean in the midst of all the brown. Why is that? It just happened. Different densities, different moistures could all impact that. As you can see, we've got a Lirio bullet back here. That's his old machine. Imagine roasting this much coffee on a 1 kilo bullet. That's just like killer. Like that's the one thing, as you move up in roasters, you just are able to roast more and more coffee at one time, which really makes a big difference. Like if I could roast a whole bucket of coffee at one moment, like I can do in a 12 kilo roaster, so much nicer. This takes about 2.5 or 1.5 roasts. My other roaster, the pepperoncini, takes 3 roasts in order to fill a 15-pound bucket. So you just get so much more economies of scale. Or is it 4 roasts? I don't know. I think when we go back to installing that other roaster, the pepperoncini, that's going to be for really much more smaller, focused lots of coffee rather than more production lots. But the other side of roasting with a smaller roaster is that, let's say you want to do 15 pounds. 15 pounds in a Lirio bullet will take you maybe 8 roasts. 15 pounds on pepperoncini 3 kilo will take you 4 roasts. This will take you 2. The IR12 will take 1. So for the same amount of coffee, and then the other ones below the capacity of the Lirio will just take even more. But what those smaller roasters offer for the roaster is more repeatability, right? You get to do more repetition, you get to get more time in the saddle and gain more roasting experience, which is really, that's really the whole game there. Like what separates like I've talked about this on Hoon's live stream, what separates someone like myself in the professional ranks versus those who are in the enthusiast ranks is really just the amount of repetition that people get to do. Like as a barista, you may sit there and do 100 shots a day or more, whereas the home enthusiast may only do 5 at the most per day. So for you to catch up to it, let's say I'm doing 100 shots a day in a professional environment, and just in a few hours, in order for you to catch up to that point, that takes you a week or longer. So the time just makes a big difference. Otherwise, I think, and that's also why I think a lot of professional baristas don't use a lot of the tooling that people in the enthusiast ranks are using, because if you're making 100 shots or 200 shots or whatever it is per day, you don't necessarily have the time to sit there to do all of the niceties for your shot. Okay, here's the cracking. We're 4:49, 9 minutes 22 seconds, so we're at first crack. See that right there? Nice. Nice. As you can see, most of the time, I don't really have to do too much. Once you understand your roaster and get rolling, and you have the temperature set correctly, you can kind of let it rise to that point. You don't necessarily have to adjust the flame and do all this other stuff. It certainly can impact it in other ways, but it's not totally necessary. Let me bring you closer to the shelf. 464. Here's our coffee from the last batch. Just as a compare. Oh, that's something. That's something. 469. Oh, yeah, 469. 1027. All right. Well, there it is. That's some coffee roasting. Craig says most roasters wouldn't look out of place 100 years. No doubt, right? No doubt. I mean, in many respects, the basic technology of roasting really, like, it's as old as that crazy drill press. But the technology of the roasters really hasn't changed that much over the last 100, 150 years. It's basically, you just get some kind of metal, heat it up, transfer that energy to the bean, make it brown, and then dump it out. It's not terrible rocket science. And I'm also someone that likes I like the idea as well as the performance of coffee that's roasted in a drum, especially a cast iron or even carbon steel roaster is fine. The cast iron, just like using a cast iron pan, it has more of that force, of the thermal force. Does it make a difference? Yeah, I think so, to a certain extent. There's also the romanticism, which I think is a big part of it. Like, why get a Gießen? The Gießen is kind of like easier Probat. Like, if you get the Probat, it's like, this is bad enough. Having a Gießen and getting support from Gießen is bad enough. But you go to Probat, and you're pretty much on your own. Because like, these are companies that want to install plant-level roasters. You know, guys that are roasting 400 kilos at a time, 200 kilos at a time, 1,500 kilos at a time, and they're, that's who they want to service, right? And like they say, the Probat L12, 12 kilo roaster, now the P12. The reason they called the L, because it was for laboratory. And I remember I was following this auction down in Houston, Texas one year. This is like maybe 5-6 years before the pandemic. And one of the big roasting companies there was getting rid of their facility there, so they're selling it off. And of course they're selling off these big maybe they were centrifugal roasters. Yeah, I think maybe the big Probats. But in their cupping lab where they were doing the quality control, they had an L12. It was their lab roaster because that's what they roasted for their lab. While we're using small things like the Quest M3, these guys are using L12s, and so the scale of operations are different. So companies like Probat and them, they really give a lot of support to those guys and pretty much ignore the rest of it. So if you're buying, even if you're buying new Probat, you're not getting too much support. If you're buying old Probat, you're getting nothing. You got to go to somebody else. So maybe the roast, those guys out in Sweden, maybe they're the ones to buy a home roaster from, because I think they got really interesting technology, but more importantly, if they'll give you the support. Like, what you want is support for your roaster. Like, trying to get support from Gießen, whether you reached out to them, to their Facebook, to their Instagram, to their official website, man, it is like almost impossible. Petroncini, same thing. I've had emissaries go to Bologna, to Petroncini Impianti SPA, directly. And I mean, like, one of the guys that I know is kind of a captain of industry in Italy. And even they're not getting any results. I'm like, man, I just need a part. That's why there's, like MB Head said, there's a romanticism to the old school, because you kind of have to, like, jerry rig it and make it work. So, I don't know, any other comments we had here? Oh, yeah. There is a lot of romanticism in cat. I'll be honest, I perpetuate that romanticism. I love it. I love this whole idea of cast iron. I love it. Much as I love, like, cast iron at home, in the kitchen, or carbon steel. Like, sure, the D3 all clad is really nice. The D5 is cool, but you know what? Give me my Debouillet carbon steel pan, and man, we can rock and roll with that baby. I just made my dinner last night on a big 1990s era lodge. Love those lodges. New lodges, not terribly excited about their finishes, right? It's nice that Lodge now has pre-season, but I'm not really enjoying the finishes on them. Craig says, I'm not looking forward to moving my 200... You have a Probat, is that right? Yeah, that's never fun. Just better to hire someone and have some riggers come in and move it. Like, this was bad enough to move. Actually, we didn't even move it. We moved it here. We had someone come in and bring a specialized forklift and fork it down here, so it made it a little bit easier. All right, well, that's it for me today. I'm going to head out, finish up the stuff here. Great to see you. Thanks for hanging out with me here for the past hour. If you have other questions about coffee or whatever, drop them in the comments, and I'll read them, and we'll work on them for future videos. Back again tomorrow morning with the next episode of the Coffee Q&A. So hope to see you then. If not, see you next time. And hope you guys have a great one. Thanks, Craig.